Ahoy, everyone. I must say I'm having a great time at this conference, and I hope so do you. So don't forget to go to organizers and actually say them thank you. So I'm Anna, and I'm indeed a big fan of mustaches and beards. I hang out on Twitter. My handle is simply my name, so please get in touch with me. I'd love to hear your stories after the talk, so please. I'm one of the potatoes, and we are a great bunch based in London, UK. We design and build complex, secure, and scalable web apps. We use Python and Django mostly, and we are known to be the people who befriended Django's ORM with App Engine's cloud data store. And we have a great sense of humor. Also, I have cute little potato stickers, so if you want one, find me afterwards. There used to be a time when a tech-savvy computer person was regarded as this reclusive night creature that lived in a basement and loved going outside and talking to people. There are still developers who prefer to work at night and don't feel very comfortable interacting with others. And that is all right. But the stereotype's been changing. Similarly to how technology and some forms of programming have been creeping into the mainstream, the typical programmer has evolved into a more social person who likes to go to conferences and meetups and hack days, give talks, and generally enjoys the company of others. We all know that being a programmer is not only about writing code, drawing diagrams, and navigating documentation. It's also about planning and brainstorming, arguing design decisions, giving and receiving feedback, joining client meetings and discussions, and generally finding a middle ground between clients' or communities' requirements and real-world possibilities, and being able to explain that. Suppose our different sets of skills are a layered cake, and one big fat layer is dedicated to technical expertise, another one for social competence. Truth is, we still prioritize technical expertise over social and emotional education. Just think about the plethora of books, articles, and tutorials that teach us coding. Even the most niche little things find a little community of devs that care about it and want to share and learn. Conversely, the social aspect of what makes a good developer isn't referred to very often. What does it actually mean to be a good developer from a social point of view? Is it about smiling all the time? That might actually end up creepy and very, very unnatural. Or is it about general courtesies like saying hi, bye, and thank you? Well, it's definitely not about insulting or harassing your team or community. But this talk isn't going to be exactly about that. This talk is going to be about subtle, that wasn't quite right moments, and all sorts of invisible interactions that happen between us all the time and can inconspicuously shape the general mood around us. It's that slim layer of cake. Oh, and by the way, if you see any resemblance of my sticker figures, drawings with XKCD, yes, the inspiration is XKCD comics, but I drew them all by myself, so I'm very proud. So this is the first story. First story is going to be about beginners and mentorship. I'd like you to meet Martina. Martina is a maintainer of an open source project called Grappi. She handles releases, changelogs, and merging code into upstream. And this is Jonel. He's currently in his second year at university. He has been using C for a while and knows a little bit of Python and JavaScript. He really likes graphi and has been using it for a while. He figured he's missing an itty-bitty feature, making graphi search for case-insensitive patterns. He heard about the concept of open source but wasn't sure what it means, so he heard that it means getting access to somebody's code and being able to make changes and then share it with everybody, and everyone will be very grateful to you. So Ionel is all enthusiastic, and firstly, he finds out the IRC address of the graphi community, joins in and says, "Hey all, I'd like to contribute to your project. How do I get started?" Well, he gets a response. You can check the documentation on contributing to the project in our repo, and you post a link. Ionel cracks on with the code. Spends about a week of his free time in total to implement the feature and creates a pull request. In the comments, he says, "Hi, this is a feature so-and-so, and this is my first pull request ever. I'm a total beginner." And here comes the moment of truth. Martina finally finds some spare time to review the code. She glances over the PR and leaves a couple of comments. "Please remove the loop and change this variable name. For the PR to be accepted, we require unit test and documentation." Back to you. Ionel is absolutely crushed by it. What the hell are unit tests? How do I add docs? What should I write there? In reality, it took Ionel 3 days to figure out how to run the project, and then another 3 to write those 6 lines of code. He can't understand why his code can't be merged in, because it works, right? Due to growing frustration, Ionel gives up and never makes the second PR. In an alternate universe, this is what could have happened. Martina glances over the PR again and leaves a different comment. "Hi, thanks for your contribution. Good job on feature X. Please remove the loop and change the variable name. For the PR to be accepted, we require unit tests and documentation." Back to you, smiley face. This is what changed. And this is called sandwich feedback. You say something nice, then you say something not so nice, then you end up with niceness again, in this case, the smiley face. It's somewhat better than the previous version, but to me, it feels insincere. And people can feel that. I think we can do better. In an alternate universe, take 2. Martina leaves a different comment, and it's, in fact, lengthy, but bear with me, I'll just read it out to you. "Hi, thanks for your contribution. We really appreciate having beginners on the project. I see you're using a loop to make the string lowercase. That looks like a valid piece of Python code. You are probably not aware of that. Python has a built-in method for that called lower. You can do random string.lower function call, and it will convert the entire string to lowercase. Isn't that neat, right? Don't worry about missing this. I still have trouble remembering all of those functions and methods from Python standard library. Thank you for adding this feature to graphi. Usually when we write new features, we find it very useful to provide some short docs on them. If you look into the docs folder, there is a file called features. Can you just add one line mentioning the case-insensitive argument? That'll be very helpful. Oh, and we usually write unit tests. There's a lot to know about tests. Start by reading this and that, so provide a couple of links, and follow our guide on adding tests. If you get stuck, just ping me on IRC and I'll try to help you out. Cheers. That was verbose. What did change? Everything. So let's break it down. There's the intro. Thank you for your contribution. We really appreciate having beginners on the project. Be welcoming. As beginners, they have taken a very big leap to make that first step. Give them some encouragement to keep moving. And if you consider that your project isn't well suited for beginners, more on that later. Only say that you appreciate having beginners contributing, if you mean it. Seriously, be honest. If you're gonna say things you don't believe, don't even bother. People can sense when you're talking from a template. If you're asking for a change, take the time to explain why something is important. Just stating facts sounds like giving orders. And you won't believe it, how some things obvious to you aren't obvious at all for beginners, and sometimes even other developers. Martina says, don't worry about missing this. I still have trouble remembering all of those functions and methods from Python standard library. With this, you've established a very humane connection. You've admitted of your own flaws, which make you seem more real and humane, not a super creature. Again, if you've actually memorized all of the Python standard library, tell me how you did that. But if you did, don't make up a lie for the contributor to feel good about themselves. You've connected with something very deep within yourself to understand what the person on the other side of the computer screen experiences. This ability to put yourself into somebody else's shoes, to feel with them, has a name. And it's called empathy. Empathy is about taking perspective, withholding judgment, recognizing emotion in others and communicating it. We all need a little bit more empathy in our lives, both on the giving and receiving end. Along with explaining why, also explain how. If it's a simple task, make it sound simple. Don't obscure by using fancy words or shoveling in there some elaborate concepts from computer science. It's just one line of text in a markdown file. And offer help. Beginners need our help. That was a lot, wasn't it? To be exact, that's 168 more words rather than compared to the first draft. But we know it's not about the quantity of sentences, right? It's about their quality. To achieve this level of understanding and empathy, it takes a lot of energy. It takes enormous amounts of energy and emotional struggle for the beginner, and it's equally energy draining for the mentor to keep up. And when both sides can see each other's perspectives, beautiful things happen. I set the focus in this story on the mentor and their ability to be empathetic because they have been beginners themselves and have a direct reference where to look. Whereas beginners have rarely been mentors, hence lack that experience. Don't forget to connect with your beginner self. Nobody's born knowing these things. We've all written bad, smelly code, and we kept on writing bad, smelly code because nobody told us that we suck, and we should never do that ever, ever again. Or maybe somebody told you so, but you were stubborn and brave and continued regardless. But not everybody is. So don't discourage people. We grow professionally with time. Offer this time to beginners. It's kind of curious and mind-blowing that almost every developer will tell you that when looking at their 1-year-old code, they'll say, oh, gee, that is horrible. What was I thinking back then? We accept our own flaws. We know we're not perfect. Let's accept the fact that others aren't either, and let them make mistakes. Well, mentorship is not just about that. There's a whole lot more. For me personally, mentorship is an intersection of teaching, inspiring, and guiding, and it's hard work. So I promised to talk about open source, and I think that beginners should have a safe playground to try things out without the pressure of perfectionism. Open source is often not the right place, especially with small, solitary, one maintainer who probably works full-time type of projects. Lack of energy drives a lack of mentorship. Also, most probably, that one maintainer of the project is not getting paid to do that, and even being shouted at by random people on the internet for not fixing a bug in time because, they need it. What fascinates me is that there are projects that harvest the energy for mentorship. Those often will be big community, many contributors types of projects. Those are the kind of projects that can afford to invest in good beginner documentation, that have people who can do so, and they will often participate in various programs like Google Summer of Code or Google Code-In. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for doing that. And if you're a big community, but you prefer to neglect beginners, then you're losing some unique perspectives to improve your project and to self-evaluate. Second story is going to be about legacy, also nicknamed code archaeology. This story is going to be about Lila. Lila has been working on a legacy project for the past 2 months, and the more she got into it, the more she realized how big it is. It's been developed in the company for the past 3 years, and before that it belonged to another agency, having in total over 50 contributors. So Lila has a bug to solve, and first thing she does, she writes a failing test and Git bisects to find the hurting commit. And the commit author is herself. It looks like this was another fix that she did when she just joined the project. Going back in time, when she first tried to fix whatever she was fixing, we can see how she acted. It was a side fix. She saw something that looked like an awkward way of accomplishing what she thought it was supposed to accomplish. So she did git blame, saw that it was a person who already left the company, and made a comment to herself, is that proper Python? Must be the reason someone got fired. And so she changed a couple of lines of code as a matter of fact, and we know it backfired. In an alternate universe, this is what could have happened. Lila finds the odd-looking piece of code, and she does git blame -s and path to the file. Why -s? Because at this point, it actually doesn't matter who made the change. She finds the commit, looks at the commit message and contents, so she's gaining more context. Seems like this bit of code was moved from somewhere else, so she does git blame before that commit, so she's going deeper into the history and finds out a very nice explanation on why it looks the way it looks and what it's supposed to serve. She found the root. She leaves a comment in the code summarizing everything she learned and why this shouldn't be removed. Case closed. Git blame is an excellent tool if used for things beyond just blaming people. And some have strong feelings about the choice of words, blame. Therefore, we have alternatives, and how we can achieve those is with Git aliases. I found this alias from a GitHub repo, and the author of the repo says the following. Sometimes you find the most amazing piece of code and you want to know who to thank for this wonderful contribution. And it feels wrong to use Git blame. Therefore, Git praise. But what if I personally rarely use Git blame to blame someone, or Git praise to thank people, though I probably should be doing that more often. So I came up with this alliance, Git Travel, because for me, it's all about going back in history and, like an archaeologist, figure out why things are the way they are. It's not about me and my judgment, it's about the history. Most probably, nobody's playing dumb. There is a reason for this bit to exist. Context makes a very big difference, and that's why it's worth spending time understanding project history. All code is legacy, or will be legacy soon enough, and you don't need decades for that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have big and complicated systems. So knowing your way around legacy code is a skill that we should develop. A couple of years ago, while I was at university, I stumbled upon this article that discussed a very complex code base of a system. And it's presented from the perspective of the new architect that decides to make a big revamp of core components. Why? Because we want to make things better. After 3 years into the project, they realized that was not the way to go. And the main issue that was identified is the fact they didn't try to understand the reasons behind the initial design solutions in depth to understand the basic problems that it tried to solve. We often see only the tip of the iceberg. That doesn't mean we shouldn't refactor and improve our code. It just means we should better be aware of the history before trying to write the future. Interestingly enough, if you do this quite often, you realize that a commit message is quite a relevant piece of information, and you understand that it should explain why and not what. Because I can see the code, I can see that the variable got renamed. I want to know why. And that suddenly makes you realize how terrible you are at writing commit messages, and you correct yourself. It is incredibly useful to tie commits to tickets in Track or Codebase or GitHub issues, because that opens a whole new dimension to understanding context. Finally, as a last resort, if no meaningful artifacts are found, check out who's the author, and if they're still around, ping them and ask why. This is my code travel guide, and I hope you'll find it useful. Having talked all about Git blame made me think about a different story. Imagine a regular day at the office, and suddenly the reporting tool starts flashing red, everybody's getting notifications on every email, the alarm in the room goes off, and there are lots of 500s happening on the production server. There's panic, team gets together real fast, figures out what the problem is, writes the fix, hot fixes are on production, and everything is back to normal. Stage 2, who is to blame and who should we punish? The team figured it was Milos who made the commit that broke everything. Everybody starts pointing fingers at him. Milos is not fired or removed from the project, but the management is giving him the looks. And it's cringy. Ivona, his teammate, even said, "I always thought Milos is sloppy and something like that will happen eventually." Everybody settled with the root cause of the problem, Milos, and now they can move on. This tendency for people to place an undue emphasis on internal characteristics of Milos as being sloppy or inattentive, rather than the external factors in explaining the situation, is called the attribution effect. We want to find a simple answer to a very complex problem. Did we solve the problem? No, we didn't. Because anyone can be Milos. Therefore, in an alternate universe, after fixing the bug, the team gets together and has a different post-mortem. They ask questions. Why did it happen in the first place? How did it slip into production? Why didn't we see it earlier? How we can prevent this kind of problems? And tries to find solutions. Maybe we need better tests, maybe we need CI or a different way of doing code reviews. Don't find fault, find remedy. This could happen to anyone. We are humans. We make mistakes. That's why we make up rules and build tools to prevent us from making those mistakes. That said, we should not keep people that are dragging the project down. Sometimes we say no to some people. How we decide who and why should be let go is a complicated matter, and I believe every company has its own process for that. Our next story is going to be about passive-aggressive interactions. This is Özlem, and she joined a new team. How exciting is that? And this is Mariwara. She's been in the team for the past 2 years. She's a proper all-time team player. Özlem is excited to get started, so she picks up her first ticket, investigates, writes the code, writes the tests. Everything is good, puts it in code complete. Mariwara picks it up for review. And Mariwara changes some implementation details, splitting some functions into multiple ones, rewriting a method. She then proceeds to merge that code and set it as completed. Özlem looks at the changes made, but feels a bit awkward to ask questions, so she lets it slide. She thinks to herself, I probably should be more attentive next time. In a few weeks' time, Mariwara again picks up one of the Özlem's tickets for review, and again moves things around, renames variable names, etc., etc. Again, no real comments from her. And that happens again and again. Özlem remains silent to her growing frustration. And now let's see the perspectives of both parties involved. Özlem feels like she isn't even contributing to the project. She can't take ownership of anything on the project because every time some bits of her work are being rewritten, and she never gets any real feedback on what was wrong or why a different solution is better. She didn't speak up at first, since she was new to the team. She didn't want to be the troublemaker. Mariwara's perspective is different. She does a code review and she sees some parts that could be improved. Not that the original solution was wrong. She has this itch of making things perfect. She thinks it's just faster, hence more beneficial to the project, to fix those things herself rather than leaving lengthy comments and explaining her vision. She never considered that the author of the ticket is offended or feels alienated. In an alternate universe, this is what could have happened. Mariwara reviews the ticket and sees a main point that could be improved. So she goes to Özlem and says, hey, I was reviewing ticket 123, and I think it's a bad idea to store that value in the database, since once it's expired, it's no use to us. Do you think we might change and store that as a value, store that value as a class attribute? Özlem says, well, that's a good point. But the problem here is that we instantiate the class in 2 other places, so we'll need to fetch that value twice, which is expensive. Oh, right, goes Mariwara. And Özlem says, well, we could store it in Memcache. Oh, that's a great idea, says Mariwara. Want to grab the ticket again, or do you want me to do it? Özlem speaking, well, I'm free now, so I'll gladly amend the feature. Cool. Ping me after you're done if you need a review, says Mariwara. Özlem and Mariwara managed to truly collaborate and come up with a better solution than either of them had in mind. They also both feel included. It's so easy to go and say or message someone, hey, I have this concern. And also, it's also important to offer a choice. At this point, it doesn't matter who will finish the ticket, because they both have an agreement, and both are looking into the same direction. That way, spirit of collaboration and trust can flourish in a team. And here we are at our final story, the power of we. We as in we together, not the royalty. So this is Haro and this is Vlad, and they work together. Vlad and Haro are estimating a new feature. On a specific line in the estimate, Haro says, Marx wrote this post a while ago. I wouldn't use it for this feature because it's meant to handle only very small sets of data. Plus, I constantly find bugs in it. You could rewrite it, Vlad. And Vlad says, all right, I'll make sure I also use the new conventions that Amira introduced recently. In an alternate universe, and you probably see where I'm going with this, I made a itty-bitty correction, replacing all the pronouns with we. We wrote this post a while ago. We shouldn't use it for this feature because it's meant to handle only very small sets of data, plus we constantly find bugs in it. We could rewrite it now. What do you think, Vlad? Sounds good. We need to make sure we use the new conventions that we've introduced recently. And this is all that changed. We gives a strong feeling of togetherness. This is such a trivial change, but the tone changes straight away. It's a big shift in our heads of how we think about work and what a team is. We are together in all the failures and all the success. The I versus he, she, or they extends to communities built around tools, libraries, programming languages. As an example, I, part of Python community, versus them, the Java, PHP, Go, whatever community. I'd be very glad if we could change the versus to together. And let's not tolerate belittling of others. I've made all of these mistakes multiple times, and even more. But I believe it's possible to change, and I'd like people around me to change for the better as well. I'm selfish, and I want to enjoy my time at work. Not that I don't. I work at an amazing company with an amazing team, and I feel safe to speak my mind, and I trust my teammates. And I hope they trust me. The influence and changes to the norm of interacting in a team or open source community can be nourished in different ways. One possibility is to have it imposed by a general rule coming up from higher up management. But I find that true, long-lasting, shatter-proof rules of interactions come unwritten, kicked off by individuals themselves in their everyday social encounters with other people. I just think that bottom-up is better. Things tend to accumulate, and little by little, good things and healthy interactions will overflow into something good, like a pleasurable place to work. All these little stories are just a fraction of what we experience every day on a social level. And these stories won't give answers to many situations that we find ourselves in. That's why you should let empathy and compassion be your guide. And not only in your professional life, but also when you're driving, buying crisps at your local corner store, visiting family for holidays, or ordering pizza. Děkuji moc. So we've got plenty of time for questions, about 6 minutes. What about the other extremes, oversensitivity or flooding with answers no one asked? Any extremes are bad. It's always about finding a balance. Same as you find the perfect balance of how you're going to write your code. Are you going to be over perfectionist and try to build the best abstract classes if you like doing that? Same with the social interactions. I would think that it is indeed complicated to work with someone who might be oversensitive on different issues, but give them the time to start feeling more comfortable and make sure that you're not trying to harm them, or you're not trying to belittle them, or you try to impose yourself as a major figure in the team or the open source community. And then people will stop being oversensitive about this kind of issues. You know, that there's a reason why they behave like that. Can you give more examples of open source projects where it's safe to beginners to contribute? Yeah, I can do. I've been part of a very big community of women in STEM called Sisters with Y, and it's a great place. They participate in Google Coding and Google Summer of Code and a couple of other programs, and all of their projects are built around this friendly environment where they don't expect you to be the professional. They have web apps built in Django and Rails, and Android apps and iOS apps. And what they do is quite significant. So some of the mobile apps I know are being used by Peace Corps volunteers in the field for fighting diseases and helping others. There are probably many more. I think we could, if you would like to propose and tell us about an open source project that is friendly to others, could you just tweet it with the hashtag so we could all learn about these places? I'm Milosh all the time. How should I react in alert situation? React as in on a post-mortem or during the alert situations? Post-mortem. I think it's okay, me being a quite self-conscious person, I would say, hey guys, I know I screwed up. I really don't want to do it next time. Like, could you ping me and like give me a shout when you feel like I'm doing something wrong or I'm just going overboard. Thanks, Benny.
Sorry for being English.
How to empathetically discourage beginners from contributing if your project cannot afford to mentor them properly. In your README, you say we can't afford mentoring beginners. We do not guarantee that. Well, just be open about it. You know, if you can't, you just can't. And in that case, I think it would be really nice if the beginners and all the other developers will react to that empathetically as well. You see, it's really hard to just be empathetic only on one side and have the other side being I can't put a word on it. Just leave a note. Be open about it. That's the easiest tip. Do you have any tips on how to save time on mentoring new contributors? It takes so much effort to do it properly. I don't. If I cut myself into mentoring, it will take always a lot of time. There is no way. I think it gets better with time. If you start mentoring someone, you could begin with spending more time, maybe have a hangout, have a face-to-face conversation, establish this so that they will feel comfortable, and then you could just give them smaller tips and they will try to lead the path by themselves. You know, eventually everybody will learn that, but honestly, there is no saving time if you want to do it properly. Do you have, I often find myself with a friendly experience, but lazy and indifferent developer. How can I respond to their bad pull requests without conflicts? Oh, that's a hard one. Humor helps, definitely. Humor helps in a lot of situations. I think the easiest, that's going to be the last question, right? I think the easiest is you could point out to something in the past that happened because of someone being lazy, or you could just make up a story about yourself when you were lazy and what happened. And try to bring that person on board with you, to care about the project. You know, if you don't care, it's basically impossible to make someone to be indifferent. I don't have all the answers. I don't.
Maybe also, maybe talking with somebody else on the team, trying to kind of together work on this issue. Probably not the only one who suffers. Maybe you can find together a way of changing.
I'm sure there is a lot of discussion to be had about this topic. Thank you, Anna, for bringing it up.